Good evening. My name is Chief James Hicks of the Natick Police Department, and I want to welcome you to this ceremony to unveil the Town of Natick 911 Memorial. Please stand by for the posting of the colors, followed by the national anthem to be sung by Robin Spinazzola.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, where the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening and welcome to our 9/11 Memorial Unveiling. I'm Rick White, the Acting Fire Chief in the town of Natick. I would like to thank the Natick town officials, the Natick Police Department, my firefighters, and Jeff Boccaccio for making this all possible. I would like to especially thank our Public Works Department, Tom Collins, Tom Haladic, and the DPW employees for all of their assistance. First, they housed our piece of steel for over 2 years and treated it with the reverence that it deserved. And then they worked side by side with us to develop the site you are all about to observe. The Public Works truly is the silent arm of public safety. Finally, I would like to thank Firefighter Dan Hartwell for all his hard work and involvement throughout this entire project. I will now turn the podium over to Josh Ostroff, the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Chief White, and thanks to all who made this possible today. And thank you to the men and women in our uniformed services who keep us safe. And just to think about who keeps us safe in our homes and in our neighborhoods. Who do we sometimes take for granted, but we should never take for granted? In a changing and dangerous world, there are people for whom there is no normal day. Every day brings threats and uncertainty. And they put on the uniform knowing this. And for that, they have our thanks. But on a truly terrible day in American history, on a terrible day for the families of 400 men and women in New York City who perished, it's a day that will never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten by any of us. This is a wonderful tribute. The town, the board, are so thankful to the volunteers that made this happen, to the private donors, to the Public Works Department, to the volunteer committee, to all of you for being here to carry forward the message to the survivors and in the memory of the public safety professionals who died on September 11th, 2001. We care, we remember, we thank you. And I thank you very much.
It is truly fitting that we gather here on this Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance to unveil this symbol of reflection in the town of Natick. 13 years ago today, when this nation came under attack, it awakened and spurred the best of human nature for all Americans. Everyone remembers where they were when they heard the news. Everyone wanted to do something, and most did whatever they were capable. Some gave blood, some volunteered, and many of our young Americans decided to join our military to defend and support this nation from any further attacks on our land and our values. We vowed never to forget. It is this spirit and commitment that brings us here this evening. There was a desire to create a symbol that will be a continuous reminder of the events of September 11th, 2001. This symbol is both to remember those that died, as well as keep the memory of their sacrifices alive in us each day. Our local efforts will be on display permanently at this location. The effort to bring this symbol here began with Kenneth Gidney, who secured the piece of steel from the wreckage of the towers. Mr. Gidney arranged for its transport from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey to Natick more than 2 years ago. His efforts were supported at that time by another local supporter of O.B. Hill Trucking. Once this piece of steel arrived, the difficult task of finding the most appropriate venue and method for displaying this gift began. The Natick DPW immediately took control of the steel so that it could be stored properly until such time that a decision was made. Shortly thereafter, members of the Natick Fire Department, Natick Police Department, and the Natick DPW formed a committee to begin discussing how to best utilize this steel. Then along came a local resident, Jeff Boccaccio, sculptor and designer. Jeff immediately felt a passion towards what the steel represented and began to introduce his vision and ideas to the project. From this point, it seemed the idea of a spectacular display of this piece took off. Professor Sheridan, and retired Chief Sheridan, and Professor Sheridan at the University of Rhode Island and his architecture students made it a class project, producing 17 designs for our consideration. From these designs, 3 concepts were developed, and Jeff added his experience and artistic vision to create the 3D version. At that point, we had a concept. Now we needed a location. With the approval of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Natick, this specific spot was chosen and approved. Then the difficult task of raising funds began. What was most encouraging and really energized our efforts were the immediate and substantial donations of John Everett and Sons Funeral Home and Mutual One Bank Foundation. These two donors stepped up without hesitation and got the ball rolling. As the word of the project began to spread throughout the community, Town Administrator Martha White felt that the residents of the town of Natick, with its strong community spirit and commitment, would be proud to support such a project. It is with this thought that a warrant article was presented at the town meeting to provide a large amount of the funding needed to allow the project to move towards construction. This article passed with a great amount of enthusiasm and pride. From that point, in-kind types of donations began as construction began. It could be better be described as sweat equity. With the assistance of the Natick DPW, Natick Fire Department, Natick Police Department, Fire Right Irrigation, Hartwell Electric, D'Ortenzio Excavating, Windy Low Nursery, Obie Hill Trucking, and Roach Brothers, the physical site you see here today, site work and placement of items in the gardens was accomplished. The result of this team effort and universal support is on display here today. Shortly, we will unveil the main piece of our garden. But before we do, there are a few elements we want you to know and consider as you view the project in its entirety. First of all, the steel. The centerpiece of the exhibit reflects the humanity of the events that day. The piece weighs 1,480 pounds. The destruction and contortion of the 1-inch steel makes the events of that day real, as this was part of a tremendous structure that was brought down. Nothing was needed to doctor the steel, so it appears as it did when recovered from the site. There's a plaque on the front of the monument. This plaque depicts public safety personnel performing the tasks and duties they do without hesitation. The poem written by Paul Grant, a former NBA basketball player. His poem brings together the feelings of that day beautifully and says a lot about the men and women of 9/11. Mr. Grant wrote this poem specifically for our project. On the rear of the monument, this depicts the branches of the military that has fought for our freedom throughout our history and still today has supported efforts to protect our country from those that may want to harm us, as those who did in 2001. The sundial. The sundial has 4 dots that when the sun shines on it will indicate the time that each tower was hit, the time the Pentagon was struck, and finally the time that Flight 93 crashed in Pennsylvania. As you move around the Memorial Garden, please accept and absorb the spirit to which it was designed, more of a garden of reflection. It is now time to unveil the Town of Natick 9/11 Memorial and Reflection Garden. I would now like to take the time to thank directly many of those previously mentioned that allowed this project to happen. Special thanks for their generous financial support. The Town of Natick Town Meeting, John Everett and Sons Funeral Home, Mutual One Bank Foundation, Danny and Gay Rowe, Natick Mills, Natick Pegasus, and Middlesex Savings Bank. Thank you for your support to make this happen. Thank you, of course, for a beautiful rendition of our national anthem from Robin Spinazzola. Special thanks and honor goes to our representatives who hold our colors here today. And if you look across, you will see representatives from the Natick Police Department, the Natick Fire Department, the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard. Every branch of our military is here, represented here tonight, and of our Fire and Police Department. Thank you for your service. Special thanks for our committee and others who assisted in putting this together. And I mentioned earlier Sweat Equity, Tom Hladek in the Natick Highway Department, Tom Collins in the Natick DPW, Art Goodhine in the Natick Land and Facilities, Ken Gidney, the Natick Fire Department, the Natick Police Department, Chris Wozni in the Fire Right Irrigation, Jerry Hartwell in Hartwell Electric, Rich Dortenzio of Dortenzio Excavating, Hottie Flagg and Wendy Lowe Nursery, Andy Hill and Kenny Fisher of O.B. Hill, the professors of Professor Sheridan and students of Professor Sheridan's URI students, Roach Brothers, and Dan Hartwell of the Natick Fire Department. Thank you for your contribution. To the committee members themselves, Chief Richard White, Tom Collins, Tom Hladek, Firefighter Dan Hartwell, Firefighter Tom Spencer, Firefighter Mike Quilty, Fire Lieutenant Ron Downing, and Police Lieutenant Cara Rossi Caffarelli. Thank you for helping putting this together. I say the last special thanks to the person that led the vision and helped a group that included me develop ideas that we would never have thought of on our own. Jeff Boccaccio is clearly the architect, designer, and project manager of what you see here today. Jeff was raised in Natick and graduated from Natick High School, and many know the work and time he has donated to several projects in town. Jeff is extremely talented, working in LA as a top special effects sculptor, working on movies such as Spider-Man 3, Iron Man, and Castaway. Jeff and his wife Nina, also an artist, decided to return and raise their 2 children in Natick, and we are glad they did. Monument sculpting and restoration of sculptures is his passion, and you will see it in all aspects of this memorial. Jeff has also worked on the Boston Firefighters Memorial currently in Boston. When Jeff was asked to work on this project and give his expertise, he immediately dove in and dedicated countless hours and lent amazing talent and vision to this project. Jeff, I know you're sneaking and you want to stay in the background over there, but I must insist that you step forward and accept and take the bow that you deserve. I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. This is a tremendous turnout and indicative of the town of Natick. I'm not surprised of the turnout we have here today. I hate to get started and see who I've seen in the crowd because I'm afraid I missed, but I know we see representatives from the town, the Board of Selectmen, I see many of our state representatives. I think they're all gathered there together. I don't know if that's a thing they have to do. I see all three of them over there. Thank you for coming out tonight. But I want to take this opportunity and conclude by announcing that we are selling pavers. The pavers you still see here are still available for sale and help support the continued maintenance that must occur as part of this brilliant display. Forms will be available in after the event, and it will also be available on Natick days if you wish to contribute. Also, we ask, as soon as the ceremony is over, that you take the opportunity to walk through the garden and observe the still, but be aware the still is as the same condition as we received it. So that means that there may still be sharp edges around that, and we don't want anyone to get injured. So avoid any of the sharp edges. Finally, we want to invite everyone back for our collation in the fire bays behind us. Please stand by as we retire the colors. This concludes our ceremony. Thank you for your attendance and continued support.